The crystal glasses clinked together as Alina balanced the silver tray on her palm. Weaving through the crowd of expensive suits and designer dresses, she had perfected this dance over the past 3 years. Keep your head down, smile politely, and become invisible. That was the secret to surviving as a waitress at the Whitmore Grand Hotel. The hotel was the kind of place where movie stars stayed when they were in town, where business deals worth millions happened over lunch, and where a single bottle of wine could cost more than Alina made in a week. The lobby alone looked like something out of a palace, with its sweeping marble staircases and chandeliers that probably cost more than most people's houses. Alina was 28 years old, but sometimes she felt much older. Her days started at 5 in the morning when she cleaned offices downtown. By noon, she would rush home to catch a few hours of sleep before her evening shift at the hotel began. The bags under her eyes told the story of someone who rarely got a full night's rest. Most people would ask why she pushed herself so hard. The answer was simple. Her younger brother, Danny, was in his 3rd year of college, studying to become an engineer. After their parents died in a house fire 5 years ago, Alina had made herself a promise. Danny would finish school. He would have the future their parents had dreamed of for him. Whatever it took, she never complained about the work. Not even on the nights when her feet ached so badly she could barely stand, or when wealthy guests snapped their fingers at her like she was a servant in some old movie. She just smiled, nodded, did her job. But there was one thing in the Whitmore Grand Hotel that made her heart hurt every single day. Right in the center of the grand ballroom sat a piano. Not just any piano. A Steinway Concert Grand, its black surface so perfectly polished that you could see your reflection in it. The kind of instrument that professional musicians dreamed of playing. Alina knew that piano well, too well. Every time she walked past it to serve drinks or clear tables, she felt a familiar ache in her chest. Sometimes, late at night, when her shift ended and the ballroom was empty, she would stop and look at it. The lights would be dimmed, and the room would be so quiet she could hear her own breathing. She would walk up to it slowly, almost like she was afraid it might disappear if she moved too fast. Her fingers would reach out and touch the smooth, cool surface of the closed lid, just for a moment, just to remember what it felt like. But she never opened it. She never sat down. She never played a single note. That part of her life was over, locked away like a door she could never open again. What the wealthy guests at the Whitmore Grand Hotel did not know, what nobody knew except Danny, was that Alina had once been someone completely different. Before the tragedy, before the double shifts and the exhaustion, she had been a pianist. Not just someone who played for fun. A real pianist. The kind with talent that made teachers shake their heads in amazement. She had started playing when she was 5 years old. Her mother had saved up for months to buy a used upright piano from a neighbor. It was old and some of the keys stuck, but to young Alina, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. She would spend hours at that piano, teaching herself songs from the radio, making up her own melodies. By the time she was a teenager, Alina was winning competitions, regional championships, state finals. Her teachers said she had something special. Not just technical skill, but real emotion in her playing. The kind of thing you could not teach. When she was 17, she had auditioned for Juilliard, one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. Getting accepted there was like winning the lottery. Most students who applied never made it through the door. Alina had not only been accepted, she had been offered a scholarship, a full ride. Her parents had cried tears of joy when the letter arrived. They had planned a future for her filled with concert halls and recordings and everything a young musician could dream of. Then, in one terrible night, everything burned away. The house fire took her parents and nearly took Danny too. By some miracle, he survived, but he spent weeks in the hospital. When Alina was not at his bedside, she was dealing with funeral arrangements, insurance companies, and a mountain of debt she had never known existed. The scholarship to Juilliard came with deadlines she could not meet. She had to make a choice between her dreams and her brother's survival. It was not really a choice at all. She withdrew from Juilliard and never looked back. She found work anywhere she could. Cleaning, waitressing, whatever paid. Danny needed to eat. He needed clothes for school. He needed a future. Her dreams could wait, except waiting turned into years, and years turned into a different life entirely. Now, the piano in the Whitmore Grand Ballroom was the closest she got to her old life. She never told anyone at the hotel about her past. What would be the point? The manager did not care if his waitresses could play piano. The guests certainly did not care. She was just the person who brought them their drinks and disappeared into the background. Sometimes, during particularly busy events, Alina would catch herself humming while she worked. Old pieces she used to play. Chopin, Rachmaninoff, Debussy. The music was still inside her, even after all these years. It never really left. On the quietest nights, when she lay in bed too exhausted to sleep, her fingers would move against the blanket, playing invisible keys. Working through complicated passages from memory, Danny had begged her more than once to go back to music, to find a way. But Alina always shut down the conversation. There was no money for lessons, no time to practice, no path back to that world. She had made her choice, and she would live with it. What kept her going was knowing that Danny would graduate next year. He had a bright future ahead of him. Good job prospects. He would not have to struggle like she did. Their parents would have been proud. That thought alone made every double shift, every aching foot, every dismissive guest worth it. Tonight was like any other. Friday evening at the Whitmore Grand, the ballroom was being set up for some charity event the next day. Alina worked efficiently, placing fresh flowers on tables, checking that every fork and knife was perfectly aligned. The piano sat silent in its usual spot. Waiting for tomorrow's entertainment, she glanced at it one more time before leaving for the night. Just another day of walking past her old dreams on the way to someone else's party. That was her life now, and she had accepted it. Or at least she thought she had. What Alina did not know as she walked out of that ballroom was that in less than 24 hours, everything was about to change. The invisible waitress was about to become impossible to ignore. Saturday arrived with the kind of chaos that made the hotel staff move twice as fast as usual. The annual Whitmore Charity Gala was not just another event. It was the event of the season. The kind of night where photographers lined up outside, where security checked every guest against a list, and where one mistake could cost someone their job. Alina had worked plenty of big events before, but nothing compared to this. As she arrived for her shift that evening, she could already feel the tension in the air. The other waitstaff were rushing around, their faces tight with concentration. The event coordinator, a woman named Patricia, who always wore her hair in a perfect bun, was barking orders into her headset, while checking her clipboard every few seconds. The ballroom had been transformed overnight. Every table was draped in cream silk. The centerpieces were arrangements of white roses that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. The chandeliers had been polished until they sparkled like diamonds. And there, on the stage, at the far end of the room, sat the piano. Tonight, someone would actually play it. Alina tried not to look at it as she went through her preparations. She had a station to set up, glasses to polish, and about 100 other tasks to complete before the guests arrived. But her eyes kept drifting back to that instrument. Tonight, a famous pianist named Viktor Petrov was scheduled to perform. She had read about him in the paper. He played sold-out shows all over the world, had recorded albums that won awards, lived the life she had once imagined for herself. The guests began arriving at 7 o'clock sharp. Alina had seen wealthy people before, but this was different. These were not just rich. These were the kind of people whose names you recognized from magazines and news shows. A movie actor she had seen in at least a dozen films. A tech billionaire whose company everyone used. Politicians who made decisions that affected millions of lives. They walked in wearing clothes that cost more than most people made in a year. Laughing and chatting like this was just another Saturday night. Alina and the other servers moved through the crowd like ghosts. They refilled champagne glasses, offered trays of fancy appetizers with names she could barely pronounce, and made sure every guest had exactly what they needed. The guests barely looked at them. A few said, "Thank you." Most just took what they wanted and continued their conversations as if the servers were invisible. It should have bothered Alina more than it did. But after 3 years, she had learned to accept it. This was not her world. She was just passing through it, doing her job, collecting her paycheck. In a few hours, these people would go back to their mansions and penthouses, and she would go back to her small apartment in her real life. The dinner service went smoothly. Course after course came out of the kitchen, each one more elaborate than the last. Elena's feet were already starting to ache, but she kept her smile fixed in place. She had learned to ignore the pain. Just a few more hours, she told herself. Just get through the night. It was halfway through the main course when everything changed. Elena was near the kitchen entrance, waiting to pick up her next tray, when she saw Patricia's face go completely white. The coordinator was talking to a man in a dark suit, and whatever he was saying was clearly very, very bad news. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes went wide with panic. Within seconds, the news spread through the staff like wildfire. Viktor Petrov had been in a car accident. Not a serious one, thank God he was fine. But his hand was injured. He could not play. There would be no performance tonight. Elena watched as Patricia went into full crisis mode. She was on her phone immediately, calling every contact she had. The other staff members whispered nervously to each other. Everyone knew what this meant. 300 of the most important people in the city had paid $10,000 each to be here tonight. A huge part of the draw was the performance by a world-famous pianist. Without that, the evening fell apart. Patricia made call after call. But it was Saturday night. Every professional musician was already booked. The symphony had a performance. The jazz clubs were packed. The wedding pianists were at weddings. Nobody was available. Nobody could save them. Elena stood frozen near the kitchen door, her tray forgotten in her hands. She watched Patricia's desperation grow with each failed phone call. The coordinator was practically begging people now, offering double their normal fee, triple anything. But money could not solve this problem. There simply was not anyone to hire. Something strange was happening inside Elena's chest. Her heart was beating faster. Her hands were starting to shake. There was a voice in her head, quiet at first, but getting louder. A crazy, impossible voice that was telling her something she could not possibly do. She tried to ignore it. She focused on her work, delivering plates, refilling glasses, staying busy. But the voice would not stop. Every time she looked at that piano sitting empty on the stage, every time she saw Patricia's panicked face, the voice got stronger. 10 minutes passed. Patricia had run out of people to call. She was standing in the corner of the ballroom now. Her phone pressed to her ear, practically in tears as she explained the situation to someone. The guests were starting to notice that something was wrong. They were checking their watches, whispering to each other. Elena set down her tray on a side table. Her whole body was trembling now. She could not believe what she was about to do. Every logical part of her brain was screaming that this was insane. She was a waitress. These people did not want to hear a waitress play piano. She had not performed in front of an audience in 10 years. She would embarrass herself. She would get fired. She would ruin everything. But her feet were already moving. She was walking toward Patricia before she could talk herself out of it. The coordinator was off the phone now, staring at her clipboard like it might suddenly produce a solution. Elena's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Excuse me?" Patricia looked up, clearly annoyed at being interrupted. "Not now. I'm dealing with a crisis." "I know," Elena said. Her mouth was dry. "I can help." Patricia's expression shifted from annoyed to confused. "What?" "The piano," Elena said, and she could hear her own voice shaking. "I can play." For a moment, Patricia just stared at her like she had spoken in a foreign language. Her eyes traveled down to Elena's waitress uniform, then back up to her face. The look she gave was not unkind, exactly, but it was clear she thought Elena was either joking or confused. "This is not the time for jokes," Patricia said. Turning back to her clipboard, "I'm not joking." Elena's voice was stronger now. "I'm serious. I can play piano. I studied for years. I can do this." Patricia looked at her again, really looked at her this time. Elena could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. The coordinator was desperate. She had no other options. What did she have to lose? You can really play, Patricia asked. Like, actually play. Not just some basic songs? Alina nodded. I was accepted to Juilliard. I can play. The words hung in the air between them. Patricia's eyes widened slightly. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she glanced at the piano, at the restless crowd, at her watch. She was out of time and out of choices. Fine, she said finally, and Elena's heart nearly stopped. You have 15 minutes to get ready. Don't make me regret this. Elena stood there, unable to move, unable to breathe. What had she just done? Patricia was already walking away, probably to announce the change to the guests. In 15 minutes, Elena would be on that stage. In 15 minutes, her carefully hidden past would come crashing into her present. Her hands were shaking so badly, she had to clasp them together. She had wanted this, had not she? Some part of her had been waiting for this moment. But now that it was here, she was terrified. These people expected a world-class performance. They expected Viktor Petrov. Instead, they were getting a waitress who had not played in front of anyone in a decade. Elena walked quickly toward the staff locker room, her mind racing. She had 15 minutes to prepare for the most important performance of her life. 15 minutes to remember everything she had spent 10 years trying to forget. 15 minutes before everything changed forever. The staff locker room felt impossibly small. Elena stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection like she was looking at a stranger. Her waitress uniform was neat and professional, but it suddenly felt all wrong. She untied her apron with shaking fingers and hung it in her locker. Underneath, she wore a simple black dress. The same dress she wore to every shift. Nothing fancy, nothing special. But it would have to do. She caught sight of her hands in the mirror. They were trembling. She pressed them flat against the cool metal of the locker door, trying to steady them, trying to breathe. In and out. Slow and deep. Like her old piano teacher used to tell her before competitions. Breathe, Elena. The music is already inside you. You just have to let it out. But that was 10 years ago. 10 years since she had performed for anyone. 10 years since she had touched a real piano with any purpose beyond dusting it. What was she thinking? She should march back out there and tell Patricia it was a mistake. Tell her to make an announcement that there would be no performance tonight. Let them refund the tickets, or play recorded music, or do anything except put her on that stage. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Danny? Good luck tonight. Hope the fancy people tip well. Love you, sis. Lena felt tears prick at her eyes. Danny had no idea what was about to happen. Nobody did. She thought about texting him back, telling him what she was about to do, but her fingers would not move. What would she even say? That she was about to play piano for 300 millionaires and billionaires? That she was about to step back into the life she had walked away from? A knock on the door made her jump. 5 minutes, someone called. 5 minutes until her world either opened back up or came crashing down completely. Elena smoothed down her dress and walked to the door. Her reflection in the mirror caught her eye one last time. She looked pale, scared. But somewhere in her eyes there was something else too. Something she had not seen in a long time. A tiny spark of the girl who used to own the stage, who used to make pianos sing, who used to believe anything was possible. She stepped out into the hallway. The sounds of the gala filled the air. Laughter, conversation, the clinking of glasses. Normal sounds for everyone else. But Elena felt like she was walking toward the edge of a cliff. Each step closer to the ballroom made her heart pound harder. Patricia was waiting near the entrance to the ballroom, still holding her clipboard like a lifeline. When she saw Elena, her expression was unreadable. Probably wondering if she had just made the biggest mistake of her career by trusting a waitress to save the most important event of the year. You ready? Patricia asked, though it was clear from her tone that she was not entirely sure this was a good idea. Elena nodded because she could not trust her voice. Ready? No? Terrified? Absolutely. But she was here. There was no turning back now. Patricia walked into the ballroom and up to the small microphone at the front. The room did not quiet immediately. These were people used to being the center of attention, not giving it. Patricia had to tap the microphone twice before the conversation started to die down. "Ladies and gentlemen," Patricia began, and Alina could hear the tension in her voice even from where she stood in the doorway. "As some of you may have heard, Viktor Petrov was involved in a minor accident this evening and is unable to perform." A ripple of disappointed murmurs spread through the crowd. Alina watched from the shadows as people frowned, checked their phones, whispered to their dinner companions. She saw one woman actually roll her eyes. However, Patricia continued, speaking louder to regain their attention. "We have arranged for an alternate performance this evening. Please welcome our surprise performer." The applause that followed was polite at best. Mostly it was scattered clapping mixed with confused looks. Alina knew what they were thinking. Who could possibly replace Viktor Petrov? Some local nobody? Some music student? This was not what they paid for. Alina walked into the ballroom and every step felt like it took an hour. The lights seemed brighter than before. The stage seemed impossibly far away. She was aware of hundreds of eyes on her, judging her simple dress, her ordinary appearance. Wondering who on earth this woman was, she heard the whispers start immediately. "Who is that? Is that one of the servers? This is ridiculous. I paid $10,000 for this." Each word was like a small knife, but Alina kept walking. One foot in front of the other. Do not look at them. Do not think about them. Just get to the piano. The stage felt like a different world. The lights were hot on her face. The piano sat there waiting, its lid already open, revealing the beautiful strings inside. Alina approached it slowly, almost reverently. This was the moment she had been both dreaming of and dreading for 10 years. She sat down on the bench and immediately felt something shift inside her. The bench was the right height. The keys were at the perfect distance. Her feet found the pedals like they had never left. Muscle memory from thousands of hours of practice came flooding back, but when she looked out at the audience, her courage almost failed her. 300 faces stared back at her. Some looked curious. Most looked skeptical. A few were already back on their phones, clearly deciding this was not worth their attention. In the back, she could see other servers watching, including some of her co-workers. They looked as shocked as everyone else. Alina's hands hovered over the keys. This was it. The moment that would either prove she still had what it took, or confirm that she should have stayed invisible, stayed safe, stayed in her place as just the waitress. She closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she was not in the Whitmore Grand Hotel anymore. She was 17 again, sitting at the old upright piano in her parents' living room. She could almost hear her mother's voice calling from the kitchen, asking her to play something beautiful. She could almost feel her father's hand on her shoulder. Proud and encouraging. The grief that usually came with those memories felt different tonight. Instead of pain, it felt like fuel. Like they were here with her. Like they had been waiting for this moment as long as she had. Alina opened her eyes and placed her fingers on the keys. She had chosen Chopin's Ballade No. 1. It was one of the most difficult pieces in the classical repertoire. Technical, emotional, demanding. The kind of piece that could make or break a performer. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it right. The first notes came out soft and gentle. It's like a question being asked. The ballroom fell silent. Not the polite silence of people pretending to pay attention, but real silence. The kind where you could hear people breathing. Alina's fingers moved across. The keys with a confidence that surprised even her. The notes flowed out like water, each one connecting to the next in a seamless stream of sound. Her body swayed slightly with the music, feeling every phrase, every emotion. The piece began to build. Soft moments gave way to powerful ones. Delicate passages exploded into thundering chords. Her hands flew across the keyboard, executing runs and jumps that required years of training. But it was not just technical skill. Anyone with enough practice could hit the right notes. What poured out of that piano was something deeper. It was 10 years of grief and sacrifice and loss. It was every double shift she had worked, every dream she had buried. Every night she had lain awake wondering if her life would ever be more than just surviving. The music swelled and crashed like ocean waves. In the audience, phones were being lowered. Conversations had stopped completely. People who had been ready to dismiss her were now sitting forward in their chairs, captivated. Alina did not see any of it. She was somewhere else entirely. She was in the music, lost in it, finally home after a decade of wandering. Her fingers knew exactly where to go. Her heart knew exactly what to feel. This was who she had always been, underneath the exhaustion and the responsibility and the endless work. This was the real Alina, the one she had almost forgotten existed. The final passage approached. She poured everything she had into it. Every ounce of emotion, every bit of technique, every fragment of the girl she used to be, and the woman she had become. The last notes rang out through the ballroom, powerful and clear, before fading slowly into silence. Alina lifted her hands from the keys and let them fall to her lap. She was breathing hard, her heart pounding. For a moment, there was nothing. Complete and total silence. Then the ballroom erupted. The sound of applause hit Alina like a physical force. It started as a rumble and built into something overwhelming. 300 people were on their feet, clapping so hard their hands must have hurt. The noise was deafening. Alina sat frozen at the piano bench, unable to process what was happening. She had expected polite appreciation at best. Maybe some scattered applause from people who felt obligated to be kind. But this was different. This was real. The same people who had barely looked at her an hour ago were now standing and cheering like they had just witnessed something extraordinary in the front row. She saw a woman with tears streaming down her face. A man in an expensive suit was shaking his head in disbelief, still clapping. Even the servers along the walls had stopped working and were applauding, their faces full of shock and pride. Elena's hands were still shaking. She did not know what to do. Should she stand? Should she bow? She had not thought this far ahead. The applause continued for what felt like forever, showing no signs of stopping. Finally, she stood up and gave a small, awkward bow. The crowd clapped even harder. Someone in the back whistled. Alina felt her cheeks burning. This was not how she had imagined her evening going. This morning, she had been cleaning offices. Tonight, she was receiving a standing ovation from some of the most powerful people in the city. But she was not done. Something inside her had awakened, something that had been sleeping for 10 years. She sat back down at the piano and the crowd quieted immediately, eager for more. If they wanted a performance, she would give them one they would never forget. Her fingers found the keys again, and this time she played Rachmaninoff. The piece was powerful and complex, full of deep emotion and technical challenges that would make most pianists nervous. But Alina was not nervous anymore. She was alive. Every note felt like breathing after holding her breath for a decade. The music filled the ballroom, rich and intense. She moved through the piece with growing confidence, her fingers dancing across the keys with precision and passion. The audience was completely silent except for the occasional gasp when she executed a particularly difficult passage. When the Rachmaninoff ended, the applause was even more enthusiastic than before. But Alina was on a roll now. She transitioned into Debussy, showing a completely different side of her ability. The French composer's dreamy, impressionistic style was a total contrast to the power of Rachmaninoff, and she played it with delicate beauty. Then, just when the audience thought they had her figured out, Alina surprised them again. She launched into an improvised jazz piece, her fingers moving with a freedom and creativity that showed she was not just a classical pianist. She was a musician in the truest sense, someone who could make any style of music her own. The crowd was mesmerized. Phones had come back out, but not to check messages. People were recording. Alina could see the bright screens held up around the room, capturing every moment. She did not care. Let them record. Let them remember. When she finally finished, after nearly 40 minutes of continuous playing, the standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. People were shouting, "Bravo!" Others were wiping tears from their eyes. The energy in the room had completely transformed. This was no longer a disappointment about Viktor Petrov not showing up. This was something better. Something unexpected and magical. Alina stood and bowed again, her legs feeling weak. She was exhausted, but exhilarated. As she stepped down from the stage, she was immediately surrounded by people. Wealthy guests who had ignored her all night were now pushing forward to shake her hand, to tell her how incredible she was. To ask where she had trained and why they had never heard of her, Patricia appeared at her elbow, her face a mixture of relief and amazement. "That was unbelievable," she whispered. "I cannot believe you have been working here for 3 years and never said anything." Before Elena could respond, a woman in an elegant silk gown approached. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with kind eyes and an air of authority. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cultured and precise. "I am so sorry to interrupt, but I had to speak with you." Elena recognized her vaguely from photographs in the society pages. Someone important, though she could not remember the name. "I am Catherine Chen," the woman said, extending her hand. "I am the director of the Steinway Society." The Steinway Society was one of the most prestigious music organizations in the country. They supported classical pianists, sponsored concerts, and helped launch careers. Catherine's eyes were bright with emotion. "I've been attending concerts for 40 years, she said. "I have heard some of the greatest pianists in the world, and what you just did up there was truly special. Where did you study?" Elena felt like she was in a dream. "I was accepted to Juilliard," she said quietly, "but I had to withdraw. Family circumstances." Catherine nodded slowly, her expression understanding. "And you have been here the whole time?" "Working as a server." "I needed the money," Elena said simply. "My younger brother is in college." Something shifted in Catherine's face. She pulled a business card from her small purse and pressed it into Elena's hand. "We need to talk," she said firmly. "Please call me tomorrow." "I mean it. Do not put this off." Before Elena could respond, more people pressed forward. A talent agent who represented concert pianists, a recording studio executive, a professor from the local conservatory. Everyone wanted to know her story, wanted to offer help, wanted to be part of whatever came next. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Elena barely remembered how she got through it. People kept approaching her with opportunities, with praise, with questions. Her coworkers looked at her like they were seeing her for the first time. Some seemed happy for her. Others looked jealous or confused. When the gala finally ended and the last guests trickled out, Lena found herself alone in the now empty ballroom. She walked back to the piano and stood there, running her hand along its smooth surface one more time. But it felt different now. It was not a symbol of everything she had lost anymore. It was a door that had just swung open. Her phone had been buzzing in her pocket all night. When she finally checked it, she found dozens of messages. The videos people had recorded were already spreading online. Someone had posted a clip to social media, and it was being shared rapidly. Hundreds of views, then thousands, then tens of thousands. The comments were pouring in. "Who is this woman? This is incredible. It's better than any concert I have paid hundreds for." Someone signed her immediately. Danny had called her 6 times and left frantic voicemails. "What is going on?" "People are sending me videos of you playing piano at some fancy event. Call me." Elena sat down on the edge of the stage, suddenly overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. A few hours ago, she had been invisible. Now the entire world seemed to be watching. Her phone kept buzzing. The view count kept climbing. Within hours, it had passed 1 million views. By morning, it would be 10 million. By the next day, 50 million. But Elena did not know any of that yet. She just sat there in the empty ballroom, holding Catherine Chen's business card, trying to understand that her life had just changed in ways she could not begin to imagine. The door to the ballroom opened, and Patricia walked in. She looked at Elena sitting on the stage and shook her head with a small smile. "Go home," she said gently. "Get some rest. Something tells me tomorrow is going to be even crazier than today." Lena nodded and stood up. Her feet still hurt from her shift. Her hands were sore from playing. But as she walked out of the Whitmore Grand Hotel that night, she felt lighter than she had in 10 years. She did not know about the phone calls that were already being made, the news producers who were tracking down her information, the record labels that were making plans to contact her, the concert halls that would soon be reaching out with offers. All she knew was that for the first time since her parents died, she had played piano for an audience, and it had felt like coming home. Whatever happened next, she had proven something to herself tonight. The girl who could make pianos sing had not died in that house fire 10 years ago. She had just been waiting for the right moment, waiting for the courage to step back into the light. As Alina walked toward the subway station, her phone rang. It was Danny. She answered it with a smile. So her brother said, his voice full of excitement and confusion. "Are you going to explain what just happened? Because the internet thinks my sister is some kind of piano genius?" Alina laughed, a real laugh, the kind she had not experienced in years. "It's a long story," she said. "I will tell you everything. But Danny, I think things are about to get very interesting." She had no idea how right she was. Alina did not sleep that night. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces in the crowd, heard the thunderous applause, felt her fingers on the piano keys. She kept checking her phone, watching the view count climb higher and higher. By 3 in the morning, the video had been viewed over 20 million times. The comment section was overwhelming. Thousands of people from around the world were writing about her performance. Some shared their own stories of abandoned dreams. Others tagged friends who worked in the music industry. Many were simply moved by what they had witnessed. This made me cry. Real talent always finds its way. She plays like someone who has lived an entire lifetime. I would pay anything to hear her in concert. Sunday morning arrived with a knock on her apartment door. Danny stood there with coffee and bagels, his face bright with excitement. He wrapped her in a huge hug before she could even say hello. "You're famous," he said, laughing. "Do you understand that? You're actually famous." They sat at her small kitchen table. The same table where Alina had paid bills and worried about money for years, and she told him the whole story. About volunteering to play, about her terror on stage, about Catherine Chen and all the people who had approached her afterward. Danny listened with tears in his eyes. When she finished, he took her hands across the table. "Mom and Dad would be so proud," he said quietly. "I know you gave up Juilliard for me. I know you sacrificed everything. But Alina, this is your chance. You have to take it." "But your tuition," she started to say. He cut her off. "I have 1 more year. I have scholarships. I can take out loans like everyone else. You have carried me for 10 years. It's time for you to fly." Alina felt tears streaming down her face. For so long, she had convinced herself that her dreams were over, that she had made her choice and had to live with it. But maybe, just maybe, it was not too late. Her phone rang. It was Catherine Chen. Alina answered with shaking hands. "I hope I am not calling too early," Catherine said warmly. But I could not wait. "Alina, I have spent all morning making calls. I want to offer you something, and I need you to really listen before you say no." What Catherine offered was beyond anything Alina had imagined. A full scholarship to complete her training at the conservatory, connections with one of the top artist management agencies in the country, and most incredibly, a debut performance slot at a major venue that was already generating buzz because of the viral video. "This does not happen," Catherine said. "Careers do not launch this way. But you have something special. The whole world saw it last night. We cannot let this moment pass." Alina could barely speak. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Catherine replied simply. "Say yes to the life you were meant to live." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Alina gave her notice at both jobs, though Patricia hugged her when she did and told her she was happy for her. The other servers threw her a small party, and while some were genuinely thrilled for her, others could not hide their resentment. Alina understood. Yesterday, she had been one of them. Today she was something else entirely. The media attention was intense. News outlets wanted interviews. Morning shows invited her to perform. Her story of the struggling waitress who stunned high society resonated with people everywhere. She became a symbol of hidden talent, of dreams deferred but not destroyed, of second chances. But Alina tried to stay grounded. She started intensive training at the conservatory, working with teachers who pushed her harder than she had ever been pushed. Her hands, soft from years of carrying trays, had to relearn the endurance needed for hours of daily practice. There were moments of frustration, times when she wondered if she had waited too long. If the gap in her training was too large to overcome, Danny visited her often, bringing takeout and encouragement. "You're doing it," he would say. "You're actually doing it." 6 months after that night at the Whitmore Grand Hotel, Alina stood backstage at Carnegie Hall. Carnegie Hall, the venue where legends performed, where the greatest musicians in history had played. And somehow, impossibly, she was about to walk onto that stage. She wore a beautiful concert gown, deep blue like the night sky. Her hair was styled professionally. She looked like a different person from the exhausted waitress in the simple black dress. But when she looked in the mirror, she saw both versions of herself. The struggle had made her who she was. She would not erase it, even if she could. Catherine appeared at her side. "Sold out," she said with a smile. "Every single seat. And Alina, there are people here from the gala. They told everyone they knew about you. They wanted to be part of your story again." The stage manager called 5 minutes. Alina walked to the wings and peeked out at the audience. Nearly 3,000 people filled the hall. She spotted Danny in the third row, looking proud enough to burst. Next to him sat some of her former co-workers from the hotel, dressed in their nicest clothes, beaming at the stage. And then she saw something that made her heart stop. In the front row sat an older couple she recognized from the gala. They were holding a framed photograph. Even from the wings, she could see what it was. A picture of her parents that must have been pulled from one of the news stories about her background. The couple saw her looking and held it up slightly. A silent message. "Your parents are here with you?" Alina had to turn away, blinking back tears. When the stage manager gave her the signal, she took a deep breath and walked into the light. The applause that greeted her was warm and encouraging. These people had paid to see her specifically. They believed in her. She sat at the piano the same way she had that night at the gala and placed her hands on the keys. The performance was flawless. Every note landed exactly where it should. Every emotion poured through the music. She played Chop and Rachmaninoff, Debussy, and several other pieces, taking the audience on a journey through different moods and styles. When she finished her final piece, the standing ovation lasted nearly 10 minutes. But Alina's story did not end there. Over the following year, she performed at concert halls across the country and eventually around the world. A recording contract led to an album that topped the classical music charts. Music critics called her a revelation and proof that true talent cannot be suppressed. Yet Alina never forgot where she came from. She used her growing platform to establish a foundation called Second Chance Melodies. The organization provided music education, instruments, and scholarships to young people from low-income families. Kids who loved music but whose families could not afford lessons. Kids like she had been. She partnered with the Whitmore Grand Hotel to host an annual benefit concert. The gala, where everything changed, became a celebration of hidden talents. Each year, they invited service workers, students, and anyone with a story of deferred dreams to audition. Winners got to perform alongside Alina. Danny graduated college and got a great job as an engineer, just as their parents had hoped. He never let Alina forget that her sacrifice had made it possible. At his graduation, he thanked her in his speech. And there was not a dry eye in the audience. 2 years after her debut at Carnegie Hall, Lena returned to the Whitmore Grand Hotel for a special performance. She walked through the same ballroom where she had once served champagne to people who never saw her. Now she was the headline act. Before the performance began, she did something unexpected. She invited all the current hotel staff to sit in the front rows. Servers, kitchen workers, housekeepers, everyone who kept the hotel running while remaining largely invisible to the guests. "This is for you," she told them before she began to play. "For everyone who works hard in the shadows. For everyone who has dreams they had to set aside. Your time might be coming too. Stay ready." As her fingers touched the keys and the first notes filled the air, Lena thought about the journey that had brought her here. The grief and the sacrifice. The long years of exhaustion. The moment of courage that changed everything. She had learned something important. Dreams do not die just because you put them aside. They wait. Sometimes for years. Sometimes for decades. But if you are brave enough to reach for them again, they can come back stronger than ever. The waitress who once served drinks in silence now made the whole world stop and listen. and her music carried a message that resonated far beyond the notes themselves. It is never too late. You are never too invisible. Your moment might be waiting just around the corner. All you have to do is be brave enough to take it.